Good morning. It's another day, another Bible study, another morning, waiting for people to come on. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Judy. All right. Got a few. I feel like this is working a little different, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it up on my computer as well. Looks like it's acting funny. Good morning, Claire and John. All right. Good to see you guys today. Good morning, Mela. How are you guys today? How's things? Just waiting for a moment while people get going. There are a few of us. I'm gonna get going here just a second. I think we got a good passage today. I think so. I think it'll take plenty of our time. Good morning, Kim. Busy but great. Good. I'm doing well. Things have been good for us. Good morning, Chris. Yeah, we've been busy as well. My son's playing basketball. What's all our events going on right now? Son's playing basketball. Uploading another podcast today. That'll be up this morning. Right after I'm done here, I'll put one up for those of you guys who've been following along. 10 steps further. That's awesome, John. I'm glad to hear that you look forward to it. Man, for me, it's funny. It's some days I'm all in, and then some days I am. It's the commitment that keeps me going. So I think that's what discipline is, though, right? For me, it's just the discipline of getting through it when it's not amazing, and then other days, you know. So I don't know. It's just a weird thing to go online morning after morning and do this, but I get encouraged by you guys every time. I never go away from doing this not feeling just lifted up and encouraged. So thank you guys for being with me in the mornings. That helps so much, keeps me going. Yeah. Good morning, Shanna. Good morning, Martha. All right. There's a few of us on here. YouTube is quiet this morning. There's not a single person on YouTube this morning. Yesterday, like half of our people were over there. So never can tell. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started here. For those people who are watching later in the day, this is the point where they might want to fast forward to it. If I ever have to miss a day, can I record it? Well, if I miss a day, then I'll miss the day. Oh, that's awesome that your sister joined. That's so good. Good morning, Lori. So good. All right, guys. Well, let's get started here. Very familiar story that we're looking at today. For those of us who have been around the church for a while, for some of you, let me know. Let me know if it's a familiar story to you or not once we get going into it. Maybe this is kind of a first time walking through it, and if that's the case, that is awesome. I've probably heard it 100 times. Just growing up in church, my parents were always in church, so this is one of those famous stories. Let's pray together and get into it. Lord, again, we're grateful. I'm grateful for this crew of people that are getting up in the mornings and really pushing me to keep going, to be in your word, to get through it. Lord, we know that your word has so much to say, and it goes so much deeper than even what we're able to get in a half an hour on a weekday morning. But Lord, we just pray that your spirit would speak to us teach us, and that truly these things would not just be about knowledge and learning, but it would be about being something different, being what you've called us to be. Lord, we pray that it would just bear fruit in our lives. We ask in Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, here we go. We're in Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14, the story of the day. Mine is titled Jesus Feeds the 5,000. Now, I titled it, What You Have Is Enough. I think is what I titled it. What You Have Is Enough. So here we go. Here we go. We know from yesterday's story that where we're picking up is Jesus was just told that his cousin, John the Baptist, was killed, executed by Herod, the Tetrarch. We saw that story yesterday. There was a party, and there was drinking, and there was dancing, and there was an oath, and there was a request to kill the religious man in the dungeon whose name was John the Baptist. And so Herod, who was pretty kind of easily swayed by seemingly his lusts, decided that was a good idea. Killed John the Baptist, and then they went and they told Jesus about it. So Jesus, verse 13 of Matthew 14, here we go. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. And when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. So Jesus, here's something to know about Jesus. Jesus, you know, we have a hard time really grasping Jesus, understanding his position as he was God's son, fully God, but then he made himself of human flesh. He was fully man, fully limited, the same way that you and I are limited. And so therefore he would have needed sleep. He needed rest. He needed all the things that we need. He needed food. He needed really companionship. I mean, I don't know if need is the right word. As much as we need it, he needed it. So Jesus understood. He was perfect, completely sinless, but yet at the same time he was completely just like us. And so I can imagine, even though Jesus kind of knows how things are playing out, he seems to know the future. He had limited himself, but yet when he hears the news of John the Baptist, it just takes the wind out of his sails. I think just like it would for you and me. When something terrible happens, when you get that news that something bad has happened, it seems like we get that news way too often anymore. I think one of the more recent ones was the Las Vegas shooting, and you hear about it and you just sink, and you can feel that feeling of just sinking. And I don't know how you process it, you know, but when those types of things happen, I kind of I tend to sink and just like get alone for a bit, get quiet for a bit. Sometimes I talk to the Lord. Sometimes I journal. Sometimes I just wallow in just like, what is going on in the world around us? Those types of thoughts, those types of sinking feelings. And I think that there's something healthy about that. There's something about we need at times to just break away and process. We need to close our eyes. We need to rest. You know, things that maybe could be easily diagnosed as a time of depression, but sometimes that's just our way of kind of processing the heavy that's going on. Jesus too would do those things. More for Jesus. Jesus did it in the perfect way. I think I don't. But Jesus does it in the perfect way where he's intentional about it. And he's like, I'm going to get away. He gets in a boat. He goes and he's seeking solitude. And the crowd hears that Jesus is going, that Jesus is on foot, or that Jesus is in this boat, and the crowd follows him on foot. So the crowd makes their way to where Jesus is. One of the things about being a voice and being in ministry is when those heavy things happen, when the weight starts happening, when the Vegas shooting takes place, or or many other things. It's the pastor who typically gets the call. It's the pastor who people go to him during those times as he's maybe seeking, how do I process this myself? There are other people looking for answers. We did a podcast, our first podcast. We actually had recorded a couple of our podcasts, my pastor, myself. We had recorded a few of these podcasts, and then the Vegas shooting happened, and then we did a podcast about that shooting because we're like, man, people are going to seek to process this, and we should probably process it with them. We should help them. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if we had the right answers, but that was the mindset behind it, is people are going to be seeking these kind of thoughts and a dialogue about this, and maybe it is that we can engage with them in that. But Jesus, as he's going out looking for just this time of rest, this time of peace, he goes out and he and the crowds come to him, and he has compassion on them. It says in verse 14, when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, and he healed their sick. Whenever Jesus came in contact, it seems, with sick, we never see a time where he does not have compassion, where he does not touch, where he does not heal those that are broken. In the presence of Jesus, there is victory. And they know that, and so they're coming to him, and he's healing them. He's setting aside the weight that is holding him down, and he's doing the work of God, and he continues to heal, and he continues to have compassion. In verse 16. And now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away and go into the villages and buy food for themselves. But Jesus says, they need not go away. You give them something to eat. One of the things that I see throughout just the call of ministry and throughout my life has been, when God shows us a need, oftentimes he's showing us the need so that we can do something about the need. These disciples recognize there are thousands of people. Jesus is doing ministry to thousands of people, and they're coming to him, and he's healing them, and he's spending the day pouring himself out for them and to them, and they're recognizing these people are going to get hungry soon, and you know how it is. Hungry people are not happy people, and so they say, Jesus, send them away. Tell them the show's over. Tell them time's up. Send them away so that they can go into the surrounding villages and they can get themselves something to eat. Now, and Jesus turns it back on them. He says, they don't need to go anywhere. You give them something to eat. You do the work. So often, when we see there's a need, any type of a need, God reveals to us a need. We're in a church service and we see the things that are wrong with the church service. Maybe we're in our workplace and we see the things that are wrong in our workplace. Maybe we're in an interaction with somebody who is just not behaving in a way that they ought to behave. And so we often think of, well, the solution to that is they got to go find help. We need to send them and point them in the right direction. We need to go find a better church that has more of this kind of put together, where they've got all of the ducks in a row and they got everything figured out. We need to find better employees or better people to work with, these types of things. But so often the solution is not go send them to somebody better. The solution is that you are aware of the problem because you can fix it, that you can have an impact in it. I talked to maybe a couple weeks ago about a guy named Phil that I saw. Young guy went into a church and just brought the friendly factor of the church just like a regular church to like, this is the friendliest church in the world, just because he showed up and he saw this need of just like, you know what, people need to build community here. Think about that, having a church where people are not, hey, people don't get together here. There's no community within this church. And I've been part of churches like that. I've been part of churches where it's like you go in on a Sunday morning, you listen to a pastor, you sing a couple songs, and then everybody goes home and nobody really talks to each other or gets to know each other. Maybe when God starts showing you those types of things, maybe the thing is you just start inviting people over for dinner. You start inviting people into your world. You start looking to be the solution to the problem rather than saying, hey, there's a problem. Send them away. send them away. That's the solution to the problem. The problem, these people are hungry, there's need, send them away. Think about maybe you have a heart that goes out for the global, the systems of, or the situations of poverty around the world. There's poverty all over the world. Like we don't realize how bad it is until we actually go and we touch it and we see it and we interact with it. My brother lives a lot of his adult life. He and his wife and his kids in Cambodia. And Cambodia is just a completely different culture, a different type of a world than what we live in here. I went to Belize this last summer and saw just this kind of poverty, the people tend to be fairly healthy, and they seem to be fairly happy, but they don't have nearly what we have, and some of that's good, some of that's not good. They tend to be a little hungrier, they tend to be a little bit more desperate. We saw a family of 8 people, truly a family of 8 people living in a house that was about the size of my office here. 8 people. And then they had an area that was not enclosed, so the walls were open, but it had a roof, and it was probably about 3 times bigger than my office. And so what we did was we closed in the walls, and we just gave them a whole lot more living space. But even still, their whole living space, family of 8 people, could still fit in my garage. Okay, so these types of things, you go and you interact with them, you see them, you touch them, you realize, one, how much you truly do have to offer, but you also, as God puts those kind of things on your heart, you begin to realize, you begin to realize needs. You begin to realize, like, hey, maybe I'm supposed to do something about this. Maybe it's, I know I'm kind of just running on this rabbit trail for a while, but that's okay, right? I think of, like teenagers. Some people just really have this heart for teenagers. They just look at like, oh man, teenagers just tend to be the most misunderstood people. Now, a lot of the adult world looks at teenagers and just be like, nope, they're just idiots. And then there are some who just say, no, they're going through a time. Did you forget you went through that time? And it was a hard time. It was this difficult season where you're understanding things you didn't previously understand, and you're looking at the world and you're challenged by it, and yet at the same time you don't know exactly how to process it because you have no experience yet. And so there are some who feel, hey man, teenagers, they need to be able to be, wisdom needs to be poured into them. And man, like a teenager, that it's such an important time in one's life to really affect the rest of their days for all time. And so somebody needs to pour into these teenagers. And I think maybe if God's put that on your heart, maybe it is that you need to find some teenagers. And then for many, I've seen it's the same is true for young kids. Your heart is for young kids. And you don't realize this, but not everybody has that same heart. Not everybody sees what you see. Not everybody sees the same need. And so you go into any one of these situations, you go into that situation and you look at it and you say, man, I see all of these needs. How is everybody else missing it? Good to have you back, Matt. You see the needs and you're saying, how is everybody missing these needs? And the truth is they're not seeing them. They don't recognize them. And there's a reason why you're seeing them. And I think the reason why is because Jesus would turn back to you and to me and he would say, you give them something to eat. You do something for them. Oftentimes we think, but I don't have enough. I don't have the resources to do it. I don't have the education to do it. I'm not cool enough to work with teens. Whatever the thing is that hinders you, let's talk about that here as we go a little bit further. They need not go away. You give them something to eat. Verse 17, they said to him, we have only 5 loaves here and 2 fish. Now we're going to realize that there are somewhere between 5,000 and 15,000 people in the midst of Jesus. Maybe up to 20,000, depending on how many kids there are in this place. So over 5,000 people, thousands of people. And Jesus says, you give them something to eat. And they say, all we got is a couple of loaves, a couple of fish. 5 loaves, 2 fish. We could give them something to eat, but it's not going to go very far. I don't have the resources to get this done. I don't have the resources to feed all of these people. You'll see the need. Jesus will put it on your heart. Do something about the need. And as Jesus calls you to do it, you'll look at your... Listen, you should, hopefully, as we are obeying the call of God, you will always find yourself lacking what the resources needed for the need. You'll always find that. That's part of the journey. That's part of the process, is that you should always feel that apart from God helping me do this, I don't have a lot of hope that this is going to work out. I don't have enough. I mean, I can't imagine that sense of five loaves and 2 fish. That does not seem like enough. It's just like, well, we could feed maybe 10 people. You know, we got a couple rolls and a couple fish, and people aren't going to get much protein. Like if we're feeding 10 people, like 2 fish, unless they're big fish, you know, that'd feed maybe 2 people, maybe 4. And so recognizing that the need will always be bigger than you. It will always be bigger than you. That shouldn't stop us from taking the step. And then look at this, verse 18. And he said, bring them here to me. Isn't that's the solution. That's the solution. What you have, you say, Lord, I'll give it to you. You can multiply it. You can do with it what you want to do with it. I will bring my loaves. I will bring my fish. I will bring my education. I will bring my money. I will bring my community, my friends. I will bring whatever I have as a resource. I will bring it to you. And I will let you use it. And Lord, if you want to feed 4 people out of this 5,000, then we'll feed 4 people. If you want to feed all of them miraculously, then we'll feed all of them miraculously. One of the things is when God starts showing you that need, one of the things that is just a powerful thing is when you look and you believe that God can do abundantly more than what you can do. That is a powerful thing. When you start looking and you start realizing that you could truly impact the world in a powerful way if God took your little bit and multiplied it. As you look and you say, you know what, there's needs all over the world. Every great work, I think this is true. Every great work started with a regular person seeing a need and taking their little bit and giving it out. Every single great work, every orphanage around the world was started with somebody saying there's kids who need a home. And they were regular people for the most part. I mean, yeah, you got people like Bill Gates and stuff like that out there who just like, man, give my leftovers to the needs of the world. You got some of that, but the majority of work that has been done, especially in the name of Christ, was regular people. Sometimes, you know, even not even the best of us. Like, you know, you look at the people within churches and the people within Christian community that have the most resources. For the most part, they're not the people who are doing the most stuff. And when I went to Cambodia, I met this girl who was running an orphanage, and I think she was probably like 22 years old. Like, this is young girl. She just went over and she saw this need for these orphans to be served, and somehow she kind of, the orphanage had been there, but she just started serving there, and within a very short time, she was all that was left, and she's serving in this orphanage and serving these little kids and just working and letting God use her and really being the mother to this army of kids at like 22 years old. It's crazy. Not because she was the best of the best, not because she had all the resources, but simply because she gave what she had to Jesus and he multiplied it. I've seen story after story. As a matter of fact, when I was first learning guitar, so I'm a worship pastor here in California, and what that means is I play guitar on a stage for Jesus, and people laugh like, that's a real job? Yeah, kind of. And I remember when I first started learning, I was playing guitar, and in the basement of the house that I was renting, and I was learning my songs, and it was all, the main point was I just wanted to sing some songs before I would do a Bible study. And, I loved music and I loved worship, but I never thought I would be good at it. I never thought I would have a job doing it. My thought was just like, well, I'm going to be a Bible teacher, and I'm going to learn some songs just in case I don't have a worship leader to kind of sing songs in a Bible study. So I started learning these songs, and then I really felt like God said, take your guitar and go to a public place. And And it was the weirdest thing. I mean, I had been playing for about 3 months. I was not good. I took my notebook that had all my chord charts in it, and I went down to Riverfront Park in Spokane. I sat down in the grass, and I opened it up, and I just started playing these songs. And I really got this sense that God was saying, if you'll give it to me now, I will use it later. I remember, I told people that people who came up, why are you doing this? I believe that God has told me that if I give it to him now, he'll use it later. If I give him what he's given me, if I take this little tiny bit, this 5 loaves and 2 fish, if I take this guitar and 4 chords that I know and 8 songs that I know, and I take them out to the grass of Riverfront Park, and I just say, you know what, I'm going to look like an idiot because I'm not good. I'm going to play these songs in a public place. God will use it later. And I had this guy come up to me. Now, I went to a big church at the time, and there was a pastor there named Chris Merkling, and the dude was awesome, like a phenomenal, gifted musician, I just wanted to be kind of like that guy. I wish I was, but he to this day, I mean, that guy's musical capabilities is so far beyond mine. But as I'm sitting there, this guy comes up to me in the park, and he says, you know Chris Merkling? And I said, yeah. And he said, God's going to use you like he used Chris Merkling. And truly now I pretty much got the same job that he had. I mean, just a crazy, crazy thought. Whatever it is that you've got, that little bit that you think is so insignificant is enough. It's enough. God's just saying, bring it to me. Bring it to me. Maybe you cook. Bring it to me. Maybe you talk. Bring it to me. Jesus just, that's the call. Bring it to me. What do you have? Maybe you've got a car that holds more people than you need to drive around. Bring it to Jesus. He'll use it. Whatever is on your heart, he'll show you the need. He has given you a little bit. Use that little bit. Bring it to me. Verse 19, then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and he said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. So, Jesus, after he takes them, this I think is an important point. This is not something I picked up on my own, but listening to John Corson this morning, I thought that this was profound. There is this process in the way that Jesus tends to work. Now, the process when you give it to him, after you give him whatever you give him, he will first take it and he will bless it. And then after he will bless it, he will use it. But before he uses it and after he blesses it, he will break it. He takes the bread and he breaks it and he gives it to the disciples. There is a process that God, we see it throughout the Bible. This is the unpopular, this is the not exciting, this is the scariest part of the journey, is before God uses it, it seems he always, I want to say often, but it seems he always first breaks it. He always first breaks it. Before God will use you powerfully, he's going to break you first. Some of you guys are going through that already. It's this, Lord, why am I breaking? Why is the world falling apart around me? Why am I experiencing this kind of pain? Why am I going through the things that I'm going through? And so often that is the process. The process is we give it to the Lord and he breaks it and then he uses it. John Corson, the pastor that I talk about from time to time, the pastor that I like to listen to before you listen to me, as he's been teaching the Bible for 30 years. Let me tell you just a tiny bit of his story. His story is he began in ministry. He was gifted for sure. He had the ability to communicate well for sure. He would start a ministry and it would thrive. But when he was young and first starting out and walking by faith, his wife was killed in a car accident. And he got remarried shortly after that and began to continue to do ministry and continued to be fruitful, and God continued to use him. And then when his daughter was 16 years old, she was killed in a car accident. And he's had these seasons of brokenness. Now, if you listen to his sermons are not about his his wife and daughters dying in a car accident. He doesn't talk about that. As a matter of fact, as you listen to him, he seems to be so filled with joy at all times. And it's on rare occasion that these types of things will even come up. God so often will put us through something, and he will break us for his glory. He will break us before he will use us. As he calls us to do something, as we give him the little bit that we have, sometimes the world that we live in, the comfort, the steadiness, the security that we think we have, he will first break it before he will use it. I don't know if that's a warning. I don't know if that's an encouragement for those of you who are going through heavy things currently. Hopefully it's not the thing that will cause us to turn back and say, you know what, it's not worth it. But he breaks the bread, gives it to the disciples, and then it says they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up, this is the end of the section that we're going to look at today, and they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces left over. And those who ate were about 5,000 men besides women and children. Please don't get offended by the fact that the disciples did not count the women and children. It's a little offensive. I'm just saying, that was the culture for sure. But I'm trying to get myself to stop saying for sure. I see myself saying that all the time. So go ahead, call me out every time you hear me say it. Send a buzzer to me or something. But they took up 12 baskets full of the leftovers. So they started with 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they ended with 12 baskets of leftovers. There's different discussion on this as to why there were 12 baskets. Here's one of my favorite ones. There are 12 disciples. Jesus breaks the bread, breaks the fish, takes them around, sends it out to the 5,000 people, actually probably 15,000 people if everybody on average has one kid. So 15,000 people being fed with just these loaves and fish. And then at the end, they get these baskets. And I don't know how big the baskets are. In my mind, I've always thought like laundry baskets. They're probably not that big. But they have 12 baskets filled with leftovers. And here's my favorite. With the 12 disciples, it's as if each disciple gets a full basket of leftovers. That, you know how it is Thanksgiving dinner. You go over to Thanksgiving dinner, at least me, especially when I was a young man, and you'd be invited to somebody's house for Thanksgiving dinner. It just seemed like I got to go home with more leftovers than anybody else because they knew that I could eat a lot. And so that's kind of the idea. The disciples are leaving with a basket each of leftovers. Here's a principle of ministry that I know to be true. When you give out, when you give what you've got, when you do all that you can, when you pour yourself out, you tend to get more back than you ever gave. That's been my experience. One of the things, somebody said this to me before I ever went on my first mission trip. They said, when you go on a mission trip and your mind is like third world country, we're going to go serve orphans, or we're going to go preach the gospel. We did some stuff in Russia where we were doing music ministry and hitting the streets and making relationships with people as much as we could and talking about Jesus. When you step out to do ministry, what you find is you get more than you give. And so you go seeing the needs of the people in these foreign lands, and you see, and you want to just pour into them, but you tend to, I know for me, for the first couple times, you tend to feel a little bit guilty because you know that you got more out of it than they did. You got more than you gave. And you're like, that's not why I came. I didn't come to get more, but you did get more. That tends to be a rule of ministry. As you give out, you get back more than you ever gave. It's just a crazy principle that I encourage you as you step out. I know, yes, brokenness is involved in the process of experiencing it, but when it's all said and done, you wind up with more than you gave out. you wind up blessed beyond what you thought you would have been blessed. You just like, you thought, hey, I'm tired. We want to actually just kind of break away and go and be in a deserted place as Jesus did here with his disciples. I just want to be alone. And then you have compassion. God puts a need upon your heart. You begin to serve the need. You begin to meet the need. You begin to pour yourself out with all that you have left. And when it's all said and done, you see in front of you, there's a basket full of food. There's more that you received than that you've given. I used to do a Bible study. I used to do a Bible study with a bunch of young people, and we met in a coffee shop, and it was just one of the most awesome times in ministry in my life. I was making about $8 an hour trying to feed my kids and put food on the table. Kids were young. I don't think Sandy was working at the time. We were blessed to be living pretty much rent free because, well, that was just kind of our life. So we were living with very little, but we had very minimal needs. And we're doing this ministry, and we did find that we were going into debt consistently because we're just like, hey, we can't pay the bills. But there was like 30 to 70 kids meeting in this coffee shop on a weekly basis, just going through the Word, just like this. I mean, it was kind of a crazy, crazy season. And as we're going through the Word with these kids, I realized, like, financially, I just can't keep doing this. I couldn't keep moving forward. And we began to just really seek God and really wrestle with it. And I announced to the kids that were coming, I said, hey guys, this is going to be short-lived. Like, we had done it for over a year, I think. And I said, hey, I'm going to have to stop doing this pretty soon. I don't see how I can keep doing it. And I had this guy, Dave, come up to me, and he said to me, because he could see that I was distressed. He could see that I was bothered by this. And he comes up and he says, Johnny, who is it that you feel like you're letting down? Who is it that you feel like you're letting down if you have to stop doing this? And he was trying to let me off the hook. And I said, man, I'm letting me down. I get more out of this than anybody else who's coming. I get more out of this than anybody else. I don't want to stop doing this because you guys are being blessed by it, but I'm being blessed by it even more. I do not want to stop. I feel like that's what you will experience when you step out, when you take that step of faith to walk after the thing that God's put on your heart, to meet that need. In the beginning, it'll be a hard step, but once you get rolling, there will just be this desire, like you will get so much more from it than you ever gave to it, that you're not going to want to stop. You're going to be so blessed by it that you just like, I just want to be in that place of even where I don't know where everything's coming from. I don't know where the blessing comes back from. So that's all I got for you guys today. 6:35, only 5 minutes late today. Tomorrow, Jesus is going to walk on water. So, hey, tell your friends, Jesus is going to walk on water tomorrow. One of my favorite stories, truly, is the Jesus walking on water. So I've got some stuff that has been just very impacting in my life as a result of that. So thank you guys. Wake up tomorrow again, 6 o'clock, 6 to 6:30. We will keep moving forward in the book of Matthew and just see what God does. So again, if that story was new to you, let me know. I imagine most of you guys have been there for a while, have been through it multiple times. But if that was new to you, just let me know. I'd love to hear if that was a new thing. So why an angry face, Mella? That was an angry face. Oh, I'm trying to like understand all of these little things. I got some thumbs up. I'm glad that you were here real time, Sandy. So good. All right. See you guys later. God bless you. Have a great day. See you, Robin. See you tomorrow. All right. And then YouTube, Matt, thank you for being on there with me. All right. Love you guys. Hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow.